You know how sometimes life hits so hard it leaves you breathless, standing there wondering what the hell just happened? Well, that's where my story begins. My name's Claire, and if you stick with me, you'll see. This isn't a tragedy. It's a rebirth. Messy, brutal, and somehow beautifully mine. It started on what should have been just another ordinary afternoon. I was behind the counter at my boutique, my pride, my sanctuary, when my phone buzzed with a message that shattered 12 years of marriage in a single gutless blow. I'm leaving you. Moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. Already drained the joint account. Haha. Yeah, Mark really thought a few smug words and a laughing emoji could end me. He thought he'd won. But here's what he didn't know. I had seen the storm coming. And while he was busy plotting his escape, I was quietly laying the foundation of my own freedom. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment everything finally made sense. The boutique was alive that day. Customers chatting, sunlight pouring through the windows, the quiet hum of normal life all around me. I was helping Mrs. Peterson, one of my favorite regulars who always had a story about her grandkids or her stubborn tomato plants, pick out a scarf. We laughed over something silly, and I wrapped her purchase in our signature silver paper, smoothing it down like I always did. That's when the phone buzzed against the counter. I glanced over, expecting some shipping delay or a text from my supplier. Instead, I saw those words. I read them once. Then again. 12 years of marriage crushed into a cheap emoji. My hands didn't even shake. I smiled at Mrs. Peterson, wished her a wonderful day, and handed her the bag. Well, if she noticed the tightness in my voice, she didn't say a thing. When the door closed behind her, I stood there just for a moment, feeling the weight of it all settle onto my chest. Mark wasn't just leaving, he was mocking me, gloating, as if I'd crumble without him, as if I'd become some sad cliche while he rode off into the sunset with his barely legal prize. I could almost picture him, beer in hand, smug grin stretching across his face, imagining me weeping over him. Only I wasn't crying. I was already planning. The truth? This hadn't blindsided me. The signs had been there for months, creeping in like rot under a fresh coat of paint. It started subtle. Late nights at work. Excuses that didn't add up. New passwords on his phone. A phone he used to leave lying around like an afterthought. Then came this sudden obsession with the gym. Protein shakes, flashy sneakers, and endless mirror selfies. He'd joke, tugging at shirts stretched too tight over his middle-aged belly. Gotta keep up with the young guns, Claire. I laughed with him, but inside something cold and sharp was starting to grow. The real betrayal came 3 months before that text. I found it while doing laundry. A crumpled dinner receipt for two from La Bella Vita, the most romantic restaurant in town. A night he'd sworn he was stuck at work. I stood there, clutching that little slip of paper like it was radioactive. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Mark had a gift for flipping accusations back onto me. Why? Making me feel crazy, paranoid, unreasonable. So instead, I got smart. That very night, I opened a secret bank account at another bank. Every few days, I moved small amounts over, just enough to stay under the radar. When Mark suggested combining all our finances to make things easier, I smiled and agreed, playing the loyal, oblivious wife he thought he still had. Meanwhile, the joint account, the one he thought he drained, had only the crumbs I left behind. The rest, locked away, safe, along with every shady receipt and suspicious charge I had quietly documented. Funny thing is, once upon a time, I truly loved Mark. We met in our mid-20s. He had a big, reckless grin and even bigger dreams. When I opened the boutique, he was right there beside me, covered in paint and sweat, hanging shelves late into the night. We were a team. At least I thought we were. But success has a way of revealing the cracks. As my boutique grew from a dream into a thriving business, something changed in him. Pride turned to resentment. Support curdled into sarcasm. My little hobby, he'd sneer. If I stayed late balancing books, he'd mutter under his breath, You're married to that damn shop. I laughed it off for years, too blind, or maybe too stubborn, to see what was really happening. Until that text. That stupid, arrogant text. That was the match. And I was already soaked in gasoline. I didn't fall apart. I didn't call him, scream at him, beg for explanations. I closed the shop early, drove home to the house, my house inherited from my grandmother, kept stubbornly in my name despite all his whining, and I got to work. First call, my lawyer, a razor-sharp woman I'd quietly hired 2 months earlier after noticing hotel charges on our credit card. "It's time," I said, my voice clear. "Good," she replied. "The papers are ready. Want him served in Miami?" I smiled, really smiled, for the first time that day. "No rush," I said. "Let him think he's won. For now." Meanwhile, Mark kept texting, each message more arrogant than the last. "Don't bother begging. Melissa and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Hope you can keep that little shop running without me." Melissa, the bubbly receptionist from his office. I'd met her once, all wide eyes, nervous giggles, and clinging to his every dumb joke. She wasn't old enough to rent a car, but old enough to wreck a marriage. And Mark wasn't done. "You're not getting any younger. At least you've got your shop to keep you busy." My little shop. The same boutique that now made more money than his middle management salary ever had. And the real kicker? "Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller." As if he had any say. The deed was in my name, something he'd conveniently forgotten. Then came the final straw. "BTW used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift." LOL. Enough was enough. I picked up the phone and called the credit card company. "Mrs. Harrison speaking?" chirped the agent on the line. "I need to report fraudulent charges," I said calmly. "And cancel a card immediately." She got right down to business. "Can you identify the charges?" I rattled them off. 2 first-class tickets to Miami. A luxury suite at the Royal Palm Hotel. And, I added sweetly, I have text messages from my husband admitting he used the card for personal expenses with his girlfriend. Would you like me to forward them? There was a brief pause, then a soft, almost conspiratorial chuckle. "We'll handle it, ma'am," she said crisply. "And we'll be removing him from the account immediately." I hung up, feeling a slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. Mark thought he was playing chess. Poor thing, he didn't even realize he was already in checkmate. By the time Mark and Melissa reached the airport, their tickets were worthless. Their hotel reservation? Canceled. That night, I sat alone in my house. My house, flipping through our old wedding album, sorting papers for my lawyer, and tracing memories that didn't even feel like mine anymore. Mark looked so different back then. Happy. Real. Not the man-child he'd become, squeezing into shirts 2 sizes too small, clinging to slang that clashed with the silver creeping into his hair. My phone buzzed. Again. And again. "I've been planning this for months. Melissa understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone your own age." He even bragged he'd told his family, claimed they all agreed we had grown apart. I screenshotted every word, stacking evidence like bricks for the wall I was quietly building. Let him think he was winning. He wasn't. By morning, the tone had shifted. "What the heck did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me." I put the phone on silent, slipped on my favorite heels, and headed to the boutique. Life doesn't stop just because your husband self-destructs. It was Friday. New handbags had just arrived. Customers filled the shop, and for a few hours, I lost myself in the comfort of work. Until the phone rang again. This time, it was his mother. "Claire, dear," Barbara began, voice tight. "Mark told us everything. Said you were controlling. That you drove him away. And now you're being vindictive, ruining his plans. I set the call to speaker and kept arranging the window display. Did he mention emptying our joint account? I asked calmly. Or charging his little vacation to our credit card? Silence. Then a brittle, well, he said you left him no choice. I offered to read her his text, the ones where he mocked my age like it was a punchline. Barbara faltered. He was cruel. That text was inappropriate. I cut in gently. Barbara, my lawyer advises no contact with Mark's family right now. Goodbye. By afternoon, the news had spread like a brush fire. Mark and Melissa were marooned at a dingy motel near the airport. His personal credit cards? Maxed out. Another red flag I'd seen months ago, one of many. When my lawyer called, her voice held a note of satisfaction. Emergency hearing set for Monday, she said. And with the evidence we have, we're in excellent shape. He'll be served. Right there, at the motel. I smiled as I pictured Melissa posting filtered selfies captioned, "Adventure Time," while the real adventure unfolded in court records and frozen accounts. Mark had been so busy plotting his escape, he never realized I was plotting my survival, and I wasn't done yet. That weekend, I kept my focus tight. Customers came and went, some noticing the quiet sadness I couldn't quite hide. Mrs. Thompson, one of my sweetest regulars, pulled me aside. Claire, you look stressed. Everything okay? I brushed it off, but she pressed, her voice full of quiet strength. My ex left me for someone younger, too. Best thing that ever happened. If you need to talk, I'm here. Her kindness nearly cracked me open, but I just smiled and rearranged the scarves on the display table. Some wounds needed to bleed in private. Mark kept texting, threats now, desperation leaking through every word. You think you're so smart? I made copies of the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine. I forwarded the message to my lawyer without even reading it twice. Another nail, hammered cleanly into his own coffin. Mark never understood what separate assets meant. He was about to learn. The hard way. Monday, the emergency hearing. Mark swaggered into the courtroom, squeezed into designer jeans and a blazer that fit his desperation more than his body. Melissa hovered outside, looking lost under the brutal courthouse lights. Inside, my lawyer moved like a surgeon. Mark's arrogant texts. The drained joint account. The fraudulent charges, a full year of shady expenses, documented line by line. Mark's lawyer tried spinning it, called me vindictive, but my lawyer didn't flinch. Prudent, not vindictive, she said crisply. Mrs. Harrison protected her livelihood. That's not revenge, that's survival. The judge wasn't buying Mark's excuses. He reviewed the documents. The house deed in my name, the boutique legally separate, the evidence stacked sky high. Mr. Harrison, the judge said, voice like iron, you admitted to financial fraud via text. Do you deny it? Mark squirmed in his chair. I was just making a clean break. By stealing, the judge snapped. And now you're claiming property you never legally owned? Mark's lawyer fumbled, tried to argue that the boutique grew during the marriage, but we were ready. It was hers before the marriage, and it remained separate, my lawyer said, voice steady. We have the records, every invoice, every tax file, every renewal. Mark deflated, right there on the stand. The judge ordered the freezing of all shared assets and demanded Mark repay the joint account within 24 hours. Mark sputtered, "It's gone!" The judge didn't blink. "Find it," he said. Outside, Melissa was still chirping about beach resorts and lost luggage. I didn't look back. My heels clicked across the marble floor, steady and sure, toward my boutique, my life. Over the next few weeks, Mark scrambled. He claimed the boutique was his idea, that he invested, that he was my partner. Every lie collapsed under the weight of cold, hard evidence. Invoices, receipts, business registrations, the quiet armor I had built, years before he ever thought to betray me. Even his family began to turn. Amanda showed up one afternoon, awkward and ashamed. We believed him, she said quietly. We thought, but after reading the texts, her voice broke. I'm sorry we doubted you. His mother called too, crying into the voicemail. I didn't raise him to be this way. I let it go to voicemail. Some things are too little. Too late. Meanwhile, the boutique thrived. Word of my story spread, and women came pouring in. Not just to shop, but to share. They'd pick up a scarf or a handbag, lean in quietly, and tell me their own stories of betrayal. My ex thought he could clean me out too, one woman said, fierce pride in her voice. They never expect us to fight back. Neither did Mark. His texts swung wildly between rage and desperation. You've ruined me. Can't we work this out? I didn't even bother responding anymore. I simply forwarded each message to my lawyer, letting Mark dig his own grave with every word. Melissa didn't stick around long. Living with a broke, bitter 45-year-old in her cramped apartment wasn't the glamorous future she'd imagined. She started posting cryptic messages about toxic relationships, and before long, she quietly dumped him for someone her own age. Poetic justice always finds its way. At the final hearing, Mark stumbled in alone, drowning in clothes 2 sizes too big. Gone was the cocky man in tight designer jeans. He was just another desperate man clinging to excuses. He provided moral support to her business, his lawyer offered weakly. My lawyer smiled, sliding printed screenshots across the table, Mark calling it her little shop, mocking it when he thought no one was listening. The judge didn't waste time. I kept my house, I kept my boutique, I kept everything I'd built with my own hands. Mark? He walked out with a stack of unpaid bills, a beat-up car he couldn't afford, and the sinking realization that he'd destroyed himself. As we left the courthouse, he hissed, You've ruined me. I'm moving back in with my parents. I smiled calmly. No, Mark, you ruined yourself. I just refuse to go down with you. Sure enough, his mother's old sedan was idling by the curb, the trunk popped open for his cardboard boxes. 45 years old, moving back to the room with the Star Wars posters still on the walls, poetic. 6 months later, I stood inside my second boutique location, watching the ribbon-cutting ceremony draw a crowd down the street. Mark was floundering. A blip on the dating apps, a reprimand at work, a promotion lost in the scandal. He tried blaming everyone but himself. I barely gave him a second thought. A year later, I opened my third boutique. Mark tried filing a complaint at work, claiming age discrimination. When my lawyer heard, he chuckled. He filed a complaint? Hilarious. The judge apparently thought so too, tossing it out with a laugh. Life wasn't just moving on, if I say, soaring. 2 years later, I stood on a conference stage telling my story, bud. Not the heartbreak, but the preparation. The choices that saved me. The work that no one saw. Today, my boutique chain has 5 thriving locations and a booming online store. The same little shop Mark once mocked became my empire. At the grand opening of my 5th store, someone unexpected showed up. Melissa. She looked nervous, holding a small bouquet. I owe you an apology, she said, voice trembling. He lied about you. And about himself. He almost dragged me down too. I smiled warmly. Good for you for finding your way out. Some lessons come hard, but at least she learned. Now Melissa's a regular at my stores, running her own consulting business. We're not friends exactly, but we're survivors. And survivors recognize each other. At my boutique's 5th anniversary party, Mark's mother came uninvited. She found me near the dessert table, her hands twisting a handkerchief. Mark still blames you, she said, voice thick with tears. But deep down, he knows. He knows he threw it all away, and you taught us something. I didn't say anything. Some things are better left unsaid. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the lights were dimmed, I stood outside my shop, looking through the window. I didn't see an aging woman anymore. I saw a woman who fought back. A woman who refused to let betrayal define her. I saw someone unbreakable. In my office, a framed screenshot of Mark's cruel text still hangs on the wall. It's not a scar anymore. It's a trophy. A reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. it's success. If this story hit home for you, show some love. Like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever faced betrayal? How did you rise above it? Let's lift each other up because remember, your best life is the best revenge.